What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Happy Hydro YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Aaron. For everyone else that does, welcome back. We are hitting the books again. We are getting into CO2 enrichment. Let's go check it out. Well, today, like I said, we are getting into CO2 enrichment. We are taking a quick dive into what adding CO2 does for your plants, how much you should be using, how to monitor it, and where the heck to get it. A blast from the past. We all remember those science classes when we saw that photosynthesis process. So your plant soaks up some water, absorbs the CO2 with sunlight, converts those raw materials into usable glucose or sugar, which is stored by your plant, or CO2, which is just released back into the atmosphere. Since you need sunlight for that photosynthesis process, don't worry about running your CO2 at night. It won't have any effect anyway. Just like my grandma used to tell me, whisper those sweet little nothings to your plant. It'll help them grow. It's an age-old notion that CO2 boosts plant growth. And it's pretty true. That addition of CO2 enrichment to your environment is going to allow your plants to not only photosynthesize more often, but faster as well. A well-maintained environment can speed up plant growth by almost 30%. So if you have a lot of plants in a smaller space, or time is critical, you may want to think about doing this. Most people introduce CO2 in the flowering stage. You can also introduce it into the vegetative stage. It'll help those little plants move out of veg and into flower in less time. So now that we know what CO2 can do, we need to know how much to use. Understanding your environment's CO2 levels will make it a lot easier to help you accurately gauge what your plant should be getting. In the great outdoors, the average CO2 level is around 300 to 400 ppm, or parts per million. While you're just hanging out inside, you're gonna see a little bit higher of levels, and that's usually between 600 to 800 ppm. Do yourself a favor and get a CO2 monitor. That will not only help you determine your ambient level of CO2, but you can use it throughout the entire growth cycle of your plants. Having a CO2 monitor will help you decide whether to just raise that CO2 enrichment a little bit, or know if you need drastic changes. A good range of CO2 for your plants is anywhere between 800 ppm and 1200 ppm. Lower numbers being more towards the vegetative and earlier stages, while you can blast those higher numbers when you're getting into that flower cycle. Do be careful if you're seeing numbers around 1800 to 2000. Not only are those levels not beneficial to your plants, they're also detrimental to you. You may experience dizziness, lightheadedness, so be careful. Garden with a buddy. So now I know you're probably thinking, Aaron, I have a job, I have family, I can't just be sitting around my plants breathing all day. There's gotta be a better way. Of course there is. So a couple ways that you can achieve that CO2 enrichment, one of them being a CO2 combustion generator, which uses something like propane or natural gas, causes a combustion reaction and releases CO2 into your environment. A helpful tip with that is to make sure you got the right attachment for the right fuel. If you're using propane or if you're using natural gas, they each have their own attachments. So make sure you're on the right track. The second way is an emitter with a compressed CO2 tank. Probably one of the more common ways because it's easy to control, but it's a little bit more for bigger grows. Finally, if you have a smaller grow, an organic chemical reaction, such as TNB Naturals, to add water, shake, and let it do its thing. It fills up a 12 by 12 by 12 room with just around 1200 ppm. Now that you've got a good idea of what adding CO2 to your environment will do and how to do it, I got 5 easy tidbits for you to remember when getting into it. Number 1, that's gonna be timing. So depending on your resources or your budget, you may have to pick a selective time to run CO2. So my best advice is to do that from week 2 to week 5 of your flower stage. You may see a little bit better results. Number 2, that is location, location, location. Your CO2 should be above your plant canopy. This way it will disperse over your plants. Since the leaves are doing all the hard work, absorbing all that CO2, just make it a little bit easier for them. Number 3, that's gonna be airflow. You're gonna wanna help circulate that CO2 and disperse it evenly among your plants. So have some fans ready to help you out. Number 4, that is temperature. When you're running CO2, your plants like a little bit warmer of an environment, so I recommend anywhere between 76 degrees Fahrenheit and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Number 5, and finally, exhaust. So you can't run CO2 and exhaust at the same time because it's pretty much just gonna go right out the window. A lot of things can happen if your temperature or your humidity gets out of control. You're gonna wanna make sure you have an idea of what kind of AC unit, what kind of dehumidifier, and what your plan is for exhausting that air that's in there and when you're gonna do that. Help yourself out, get some temperature sensors, get some humidity sensors so you can keep an eye on that environment, and growing's gonna be a breeze. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching. Check us back again. And as always, stay happy, friends.